Sigmund Freud. Love him or hate him, you can't ignore him. He's an absolute giant of the 20th century. But he said something about his own creation, psychoanalysis, that has been a real puzzle for, well, over 100 years. And this one claim, it puts his entire legacy on the line. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, so get this. In 1940, right at the end of his life, Freud drops this bombshell. He doesn't say psychoanalysis is, kind of like a science, or that it's trying to be one. No, he says it is a natural science, period. Just like physics or chemistry. I mean, that's an incredibly bold claim, right?
And that is the big question we're tackling today. Was Freud actually right about his own life's work? Or, as some critics have said, did he have a massive misunderstanding of what he had created?
Now, squaring up on the other side of the ring is the heavyweight philosopher Jürgen Habermas. And he famously called Freud's claim a scientific self-misunderstanding. Ouch. Basically, Habermas argued that Freud completely mislabeled his own incredible discovery. So you've got these two intellectual giants just going head to head.
So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, who cares what we call it? Natural science, not a natural science, what's the big deal? Well, it's actually a huge deal. See, if psychoanalysis is a natural science, then it's got to be tested like one. We're talking large, controlled studies looking for universal laws. But if it's something else, then using those tests isn't just a bad fit, it could actually be damaging. The whole legitimacy of the field is riding on this.
All right, so let's dig into Freud's side of the argument first. I mean, how on earth can a practice that's all about talking about dreams, about your childhood, how can that possibly be a natural science? Well, according to its defenders, it all comes down to attitude.
And this is the central idea, which was really championed by the psychoanalyst Charles Brenner. His whole point is this. What makes something a science isn't the subject matter. It doesn't matter if you're studying atoms or anxieties. What matters is the how, the way you study it.
So Brenner's logic goes like this. The scientific attitude is all about being empirical, objective, and constantly questioning everything. Now, sure, the data in psychoanalysis is, well, messy. It's wishes, fears, fantasies, all the complicated stuff of being human. But, and this is his key point, he argues that what an analyst does with that data, observing, gathering it, testing ideas, is basically the same process any other scientist uses.
And that's a pretty compelling argument, you have to admit, but it hits a major roadblock almost immediately. And that's the method. The way psychoanalysis actually works just seems so radically different from any other natural science out there.
Which leads us to the critical counter question, right? Can you really put a patient's story about a dream in the same box as, say, the results from a blood test or the measurement of a light wave? Are they even the same kind of thing?
I mean, just look at the difference. In medicine, your data is objective. It's physical stuff. You can see, it's publicly accessible. You can verify it with tests. But in psychoanalysis, the data is the patient's private, totally subjective statements. The analyst's own feelings and thoughts are part of the process, and you can't really verify any of it in the same way you can a medical diagnosis. At the end of the day, it's just an interchange of words. That's it.
And look, these differences create some huge methodological problems. For one, the observations are totally private. The analysis depends entirely on the analyst's private judgment. Plus, you're always looking backward in time, which can easily lead you to reason in circles. And maybe the biggest one, how can you possibly create general rules from the unique story of just one person? When you look at it this way, trying to call it a natural science starts to feel, as one critic said, epistemically quite hopeless.
Okay, so if the method doesn't really fit, does that just mean Freud was plain wrong? Well, hold on. This is where things get really interesting. The argument we're exploring today suggests a fascinating twist. What if everyone on both sides of this debate has been looking in completely the wrong place?
To get our heads around this, we have to look at a classic Freudian idea, the repetition compulsion. You've probably heard of it. It's this unconscious drive we all have to repeat painful patterns from our past over and over and over again without even realizing why we're doing it.
And here is the big aha moment. Freud's claim that psychoanalysis is a natural science, it wasn't about the method, it was about the subject itself. For Freud, the unconscious, with all its powerful compulsive drives, actually operates with the force of nature.
This brings us to this really cool concept, pseudo-nature. Think about it like this. Patterns that get created by our social lives and our personal histories, like our neuroses, can become so deeply ingrained that they feel just like second nature. They start to operate with the same unstoppable, inescapable force as a law of physics.
This comparison here is a perfect way to see it. If you push a stone off a table, gravity takes over. The stone has to fall. That's a true natural law. Now, think about someone stuck in a repetition compulsion. When they get triggered, they feel like they have to repeat that same old self-destructive pattern. For that person, in that moment, the law of their own mind feels every bit as powerful and inevitable as gravity itself.
But, and this is the absolutely mind-bending difference, you can go and pick that stone back up, right? But you haven't changed the law of gravity. It's still there. But with psychoanalysis, by dragging that unconscious pattern out into the light, you can actually suspend the possibility of the repetition. You can literally dissolve the law itself. Why? Because it was never a real law of nature in the first place. It was a product of one person's unique history.
And once you grasp that distinction, wow, it changes everything. It suggests that this whole long-running debate might be based on a huge, fundamental mistake, a category error.
So here's how that flawed logic plays out. Step 1, critics mistakenly treat these deeply personal, pseudo-natural laws as if they're universal laws, like gravity. Step 2, they then apply scientific tests that were designed for those universal laws. And step 3, the false conclusion. When psychoanalysis, surprise, surprise, fails these totally inappropriate tests, they declare it unscientific. It's like trying to measure the beauty of a poem with a ruler and then concluding poetry is meaningless because it has no length. It's the wrong tool for the job.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's this. Psychoanalysis was never trying to be a science of the universal. It is a science of the individual. It's a method for understanding the very specific, totally unique developmental logic of one single person's inner world. And judging that by the standards of a universal science, well, maybe that's the real self-misunderstanding in this whole debate.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative question to chew on. What should the true goal of a science of the mind even be? Should we be searching for broad, universal laws that apply to everybody, but maybe miss the very things that make you, you? Or should the goal be to develop a rigorous way to master the complex, hidden logic that's unique to each individual? Freud's puzzle kind of forces our hand. It makes us decide what we really want psychology to be.